Good evening. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. If you didn't guess, I'm James Nevius, my wife Michelle, and we are the authors of Inside the Apple, a streetwise history of New York City. We would really like to thank the New York Historical Society for having us here tonight. Thanks to Kathleen for arranging this and for everybody here on the Society's staff for making this happen. And really, this book wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the New York Historical Society, because in many ways I don't think any book about New York City would exist without the collections here, without the people who have over the generations been sort of movers and shakers at the Society to keep New York's history in the forefront. So really we are benefiting from their largesse, not just for this book, but in general. So tonight we'd like to do three things. Briefly introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about Inside the Apple, how it's structured. It's a little bit of a unique history/tour guide. And then get to the meat of things. Share some of the stories from the book that either have to do with the fact that this is New York's 400th anniversary this year, or stories about people in the book who are have been members of the New York Historical Society, and a little bit about this Upper West Side neighborhood where we all find ourselves tonight. So, first, us. Michelle began her career as, that is not Michelle, began her career as a historian studying the Bronze Age, specifically the archaeology of Minoan Crete. This is perhaps not what you would think of as the training that you need to be a New York City tour guide. But being an archaeologist and being a tour guide are in some ways very similar, because what you have to do as an archaeologist is take a pile of rocks and make people see that, at least in their mind's eye. This is also true of being a tour guide. When we're downtown in the financial district, we need to be able to take people to this, which, if you don't recognize it, is the pit at the World Trade Center site, and get them to see this. Well, not exactly this anymore. I don't know how many of you remember this. That's what the Freedom Tower was going to look like. There we go. Pointy, translucent. There it is. This is more what the Freedom Tower is actually going to look like. There we go. So we need to, as historians and tour guides, get people to visualize the future, in this case, or visualize the past. So a lot of what Inside the Apple is about is to get people to see, at least in their mind's eye, something that we're talking about. My own love of history is family history. My great-great-grandfather was a guy named Johannes Nevius, who came to this country in about 1651. He was a merchant, and then he entered city politics, first as a magistrate, and then as the secretary of the city of New Amsterdam under this guy, Peter Stuyvesant. This is the family homestead, or what's left of it. The yellow outline that you see on the sidewalk there, that's at the corner of Pearl Street and Coenties Slip in the financial district, and that was once the site of one of the most famous buildings in all of New Amsterdam, the Stadhuis, or City Hall. This is a slightly better picture. The Stadhuis is the one in the middle there. It has a cupola on top. That's where they would ring the bell to call people to court. The ground floor would have been the courthouse. If you were a town magistrate in New Amsterdam, what essentially you did was you adjudicated law cases. And then on the upper floors is where the Nevius family resided. So that was my first introduction to New York City history. And about 10 years ago, Michelle and I decided that we should take our formal training in history and our passion for New York and turn it into a business. So that's us out giving tours. We have given tours to groups large and small, really as small as one person, as large as hundreds, and it's from every walk of life, students, seniors, you name it, everything in between. And a question that we are often asked at the end of a tour is, where can I read about this? What do you recommend that I turn to read the kind of stories that you've just been telling me on a tour? And the answer is never easy, because we collect information from sources, original research, archives, books, you name it. People aren't normally looking for that list. What they're looking for is a source. So we wrote it. We created a book that would take the entire history of the city and break it down into 182 discrete short chapters, each one tied to a place. Happens to be one of the chapters about Boss Tweed that you see up on the screen there. You can go someplace, you can take the book in your hand, and you can read about it. So the book is chronological in 7 sections from 1609 to the present, and then has a final 8th section that is 14 self-guided walking tours. So you can take the maps and the directions and follow step by step using the book to read the stories as you go. The question when starting this book was, where in fact do we start? You could start all the way back there. This is my own personal desire. I would like to start at the moment of creation, but that's too far back. And in our case, it wouldn't be this far back. It would be the glaciers retreating up the Hudson River Valley and carving out the fjord that later became the river. But we decided instead, since this was a book about places that you could go and stand and see and visit, that we would start with the birth of the city. But then again, when was the city born? As we write in the book, New York has had a long romance with its early history, which is often depicted through a gauzy lens of nostalgia. Stout windmills line the harbor. Able-bodied men in tall hats trade beaver skins with the peace-loving Indians. And their wives stand in half doors, still known as Dutch doors today, a gaggle of children at their feet, or a cat in this case. All of this is overseen by the stern hand of Peg-Leg Peter Stuyvesant, the colony's curmudgeonly Director General. This is not just the stuff of children's stories. The city's picturesque past is even enshrined on its Great Seal. At its center are the arms of a Dutch windmill. Top and bottom are beavers, Manhattan's first great export commodity. Left and right are barrels of flour, an important English staple. To the left is a Dutch or English sailor who represents the city's first European inhabitants, and to the right, a Native American representing the people that the Europeans displaced. At the top of the seal originally sat a British crown, which was replaced after 1783 with an American bald eagle. Finally, at the bottom of the seal is the date of the city's founding. Now, originally, this was 1686, the year Governor Thomas Dongan received an official charter. Later, that date was changed to 1664. That was the year the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam was conquered by the English and renamed New York. However, in 1975, the date was changed again to 1625 to recognize the Dutch contributions to the city's founding. But the city's not waiting till 2025 to celebrate its birthday. It's doing it this year to recognize the 400th anniversary of the arrival of Henry Hudson in 1609.
So this is Henry Hudson, or actually, more precisely, it is not Henry Hudson. As historian Thomas John Vier has written in his biography of Hudson, no portrait of Hudson is known to be in existence. What has passed with the uncritical for his portrait, a dapper-looking man wearing a ruffed collar, frequently has been and continues to be reproduced. Who that man was is unknown, but he was not Hudson, that is certain. But we'll call him Henry Hudson. So 400 years ago, on September 11th, 1609, Henry Hudson sailed into New York Harbor on his ship, the Half Moon, and that began our life as an American city. It's hard to decide where to place Hudson in the pantheon of early American explorers. Like all of them, he was essentially sailing blindly into terra incognita. Had he missed the entrance to New York Harbor and sailed home, he'd be little more than a footnote, perhaps known better for the way he died than the way he lived. Hudson was a bit of a bore. On a later voyage in 1611, his crew, sick of him, mutinied and sent him overboard in Hudson's Bay, Canada. But that's another story.